Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. National investment policy closer to being passed. National Solid Waste Management Authority Chairman calls for changes to procurement processes. And later in sports, West Indies bowlers made to toil on opening day of first test against Australia. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shane Masters and here are the details. Road traffic fatalities have climbed to 431, with 45 of those deaths occurring during November. The figure has surpassed the 429 fatalities recorded during the corresponding period in 2021. Vice Chair of the National Road Safety Council, Dr. Lucien Jones, says 90 pedestrians have died on the nation's roads up to November 29. Dr. Jones gave a further breakdown of the data.
29 motorcyclists and 15 pedal cyclists. We really have to find a way to protect those who have no protection. And the most important thing to do is just to slow down. Yes, we need to remind the pedestrians to wear light colored clothes at nights, because when they wear dark colors, nobody can see you. They have to cross with care, but far too many of them are dying because either motorcyclists or cars are speeding and hitting down people on the roads, which is what happened last night.
Of the 90 pedestrians who died, 7 were children. 5 were teenagers who were driving motorcycles. There were 487 road fatalities in Jamaica in 2021. The latest fatality occurred last evening when a pedestrian was mowed down in St. Catherine. The 42-year-old woman was reportedly walking along the Charlemont Main Road about 7:20 when she was hit by a motor car. The driver did not stop. The woman received head injuries and was taken to the Lincoln Hospital, where she died. In a TVJ News follow-up, classes at the Homestead Primary and Infant School have been disrupted for a second straight day. It comes as a number of teachers have stayed away from the institution. TVJ News understands that of the 21 teachers employed at the school, 13 were absent on Wednesday. Also absent are the principal and the vice principal. On Tuesday, parents and teachers staged a protest calling for the principal to be relieved of her duties, as they say her mismanagement of the institution is not good. Her management of the institution, rather, is lacking. Now, this was one of the teachers at yesterday's demonstration.
Are displeased with our principal, Ms. Sophie Dear's behavior. There has been some indisciplined situation at the school, and the children are not being disciplined and the teachers are not being respected. When blouses are taken to the principal, it is shoved under the mat, and teachers are not feeling safe at the school, neither are the students feeling safe. We want our voices and our concerns to be heard.
It's understood that representatives of the Education Ministry met with teachers at the institution on Tuesday. However, the outcome of the meeting is not known at this time. The St. Elizabeth Police are investigating a daylight robbery outside the National Commercial Bank NCB in Santa Cruz this morning. Now, TVJ News understands that a woman had just withdrawn a large sum of cash and left the bank on Coke Drive about 9:20 when one of 2 gunmen walked up to her, fired a shot and grabbed the bag of money. The gunshot punctured the tire of a car that had just parked outside the bank. A second gunman, who was reportedly the lookout, ran after the robbery, while the robber reportedly escaped on foot.
So when I pass him, I check me and I check my female, I go up the road. Me I come out the road and I look and I say, look how far man walk back. Nobody for hold him. We if I look at that, the same man walk by the back.
And it's time for a break, but please stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. The 50 new garbage trucks to address Jamaica's garbage problem have now been handed over to the National Solid Waste Management Authority, NSWMA. At the ceremony at the National Heroes Park this morning, there were promises to address issues impacting the efficiency of the NSWMA, including bureaucratic red tape.
After months of waiting, the National Solid Waste Management Authority, NSWMA, is now in receipt of the promised 50 new garbage trucks. It comes in time for the festive season cleanup efforts. But while the trucks are now in the hands of the Solid Waste Authority, there is a call for bureaucratic changes. Chairman of the authority, Dennis Chung, made the call Wednesday morning.
The procurement process is too cumbersome and too bureaucratic. If we did not have those trucks from 2016, the time that it took us to wait on these trucks would have had a serious health problem. We have to find a way to shorten the process, especially in emergency situations like this. It cannot be so bureaucratic. I think the cost is greater than what we're trying to avoid by going through the process, and we have to change it.
It's a point that Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clarke says will be looked at in the near future. He says so far, what has been done within the Procurement Commission is that the process, which usually takes 8 weeks, is now down to 2.
Now that bottleneck has been addressed, there are other areas that we have to look to, including duplication of efforts, meaning there are certain steps that might need to change, certain thresholds that might need to be adjusted. Yeah, to be certain steps that have to be removed. But let me just suffice to say, ladies and gentlemen, that this represents the beginning.
For Local Government Minister Desmond McKenzie, there could have been more garbage trucks in the hands of the NSWMA, but funds had to be used to deal with other crises, such as the fires that the dumps operated by the authority between 2011 and 2016. He says over $800 million was spent on putting out those fires.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you imagine what $800 million could have done in providing trucks for this country during that period of time? And the government, through the National Solid Waste Management Authority, today is still paying for those fires that took place more than 7 years ago, because a lot of persons took out various suits against the authority. It is still a burden on the resources of the National Solid Waste Management Authority.
Herman Green, TVJ News.
The national investment policy is closer to being passed, with Cabinet giving it the green light. That announcement was made this morning at day 2 of the Invest Jamaica Business Conference in Montego Bay, St. James. Our business reporter Javon Keys is there and joins me live. Javon?
Thank you so much, O'Shane. Well, it's the final day of the Invest Jamaica Business Conference in Montego Bay, St. James. Of course, about 600 business stakeholders and industry leaders are registered from about 51 countries. And on today's agenda, lots of activities similar to yesterday. We've heard from the Inter-American Development Bank and respective representatives, to include Jamie Granados, who is division chief in charge of investments. And he spoke about the fact that Jamaica needs to expand the services industry to be able to realize increased growth, and that sector includes the BPO and knowledge process outsourcing sector. But a key announcement was made this morning by Minister of State in the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, Dr. Norman Dunn, and he spoke about the fact that plans are advanced regarding the national investment policy.
The national investment policy has been approved by Cabinet. It has since been submitted to Parliament and is currently scheduled for tabling. The policy focuses on 11 main contributory policies, issues towards improving and increasing private direct investments in Jamaica. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a major signal of the Jamaican government's commitment to engender a business environment that bolsters and enhances economic development and growth through sustainable investment. The national investment policy also underpins the National Business Portal, which is intended to drive improvements in the business environment by shifting government online.
Now, climate action was also on the agenda for discussion. The Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, Invest Arm head Jamie Scriven spoke about the fact that $18 billion will be needed to be invested in the Caribbean and Latin America annually to support investment in mitigating against climate change and climate crises. Agriculture Minister Colonel Charles Jr. also spoke on a panel. He looked at the area of agribusiness and how agribusiness investment is a key area of growth for Jamaica. A special economic zone discussion panel was just concluded, and the remainder of discussions will include Jamaica's financial ecosystem, and of course, there will be other stakeholder discussions throughout the day. Of course, I'll have much more, and it's later on in prime time news. But then it's back to you in studio, O'Shea.
Thanks, Javon. Here now is a preview of what's coming up in this evening's health report.
In this evening's health report, we look at allergic rhinitis.
Persons who find that they are having nasal allergies and they're constantly rubbing their eyes, that is something that must be taken seriously. We have had persons who have had severe damage to their cornea from the rubbing of the eyes and have required things like corneal transplant because of loss of vision. So if you have symptoms that are that bad, you need to have proper treatment, both by your ENT and also by your ophthalmologist to ensure that you don't damage your eyes.
That's a health report in Primetime News at 7. And now for today's healthy living tip. Reduce dust and dust mites in the home. Control moles indoors and out. And avoid exposure to plant pollens and animals.
And it's now time for the Business Minute. Here's Cody and Barrett.
Regency Petroleum Limited, RPL, has secured over $1 billion in equity capital through its recent initial public offering IPO, surpassing its target by over $700 million. The IPO, which opened on November 24 with a total of 287.2 million shares, priced at $1 Jamaican per share, was oversubscribed and closed a day after opening with over 10,000 applicants. Of the 287.2 million shares, only 115.2 million were open to the public. In news overseas, oil prices in the U.S. have hit a low not seen in nearly a year. Futures for West Texas Intermediate crude oil fell just over 3% on Monday. Meanwhile, futures for the global benchmark Brent crude dropped to $81 per barrel. Analysts say fears about COVID-19 restrictions and lockdown protests in China have caused a dent in demand, leading to lower gas prices in the United States. That's it for the Business Minute. I'm Cody Ann Barrett.
And now for the top regional and international stories.
In the region, a 5.1 magnitude earthquake rattled Trinidad and Tobago on Tuesday night, but there were no records of injuries or damage. The Twin Island Republic has been rattled by heavy rains over the past few days, causing widespread floods, landslides, and interruptions in water and energy supplies. This earthquake is the most recent natural disaster to hit the region. On the international scene, in the United States, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi says her chamber will vote on Wednesday to prevent a rail workers' strike. A strike could increase prices for Americans who are already grappling with high inflation. As a result, U.S. President Joe Biden has pushed Congress to immediately pass the legislation to prevent a shutdown. But the members of the 4 rail unions have already rejected a previous proposal and are ready to strike over issues like paid sick time. And those were the top regional and international stories. I'm Cody Ann Barrett.
And we head to a quick break. When we come back, Jordan Fort will have your midday sports report.